we got here? Oh, this one looks good. 1-bedroom hut featuring a spacious garage and booked. That's everything. Finally, a well-deserved vacation. A one-way ticket to the desert featuring sand, rocks, sand, cacti, tumbleweeds, and best of all, sand. For that person that wants to get away and be in the middle of absolutely nowhere, the desert is the place for you. Come and have the greatest road trip of your entire life. So, waking up for my first day in my brand new holiday home, boy was I excited. Now the bedroom was slightly run down, but hey, it was affordable on the listing, and the reviews weren't too bad. And anyway, there's nothing to worry about. I really didn't care, because the surrounding area was full of life. Well, it appeared the owners had left me with some housewarming supplies for my stay. A pack of cigarettes, 2 Italian sausages, a croissant, a bread roll, and some Lonyal booze. There was also a TV showing various channels. But I didn't book this holiday to sit in my bedroom and watch TV all day. I was itching to hit those open desert roads, have a road trip of a lifetime, feel the wind in my hair, on my head. But to hit said desert roads, I'd need a vehicle. And boy, did I have just that. Voila! My means of transport for the week. Now, my mate Dave had assured me he'd got a good deal on this bad boy from a top-class dealership in Croydon. Then all I had to do was have it privately shipped over here. Now, sure, the car might not have been in the best condition. The bodywork was somewhat covered in rust, and the wheel caps had virtually eroded. So after running the car through some thorough tests, I got to work, frantically scrubbing the rust off the bodywork. Until the wire brush was just a wooden handle. Replaced the old worn-out rims for new ones I'd found lying around the hut. Gave the car a good cleaning, squeaky clean, new air freshener, topped the engine up with some fresh oil. I worked tirelessly through the night fixing her up, and finally, I was done. Now, it wasn't perfect by any means. Some parts of the car were beyond saving, but she was good enough. Now, every good road trip needs supplies. It was time to load up the trunk. With just an old spare tyre in there, I needed items for my journey. So I loaded in the remaining car oil for the engine, 5 litres of water, 2 litres of spare gas, binoculars, the croissant, the bread roll, some booze, and after doing some searching in the dusty attic, I found a katana. Ha! 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 Oh shit. That went in. And finally, a wooden rifle and some ammo. Now before this could go in, I needed aim practice. And I put the rifle in the back seat for quick access in case of emergency. So I took a few bites of Italian sausage, chugged some booze, had a quick piss break, and used the bog. So with tasty food rations, spare car supplies, weapons for defense, and an empty bladder, I was ready. But I couldn't do the road trip alone. I needed company. And with not many locals around, I got the next best thing, my inflatable giraffe, Benny. So with Benny strapped in the passenger seat, it was time to set off. I swung open the garage doors, started the ignition, the engine purred beautifully, released the handbrake, and ventured out of the hut. Now, once on the road, I had 2 primary options. Left, a visible dead end with a lone bus stop, which I assumed was very out of service, which honestly wasn't too dissimilar to being back in the UK. I mean, honestly, don't really know where a bus here would even go. There was no signs of any towns or anything for that matter. There was a bus timetable, but it was clear that if this bus stop was a part of an active bus route, it was certainly the end of it. And then to the right, open road for miles. I mean, I had absolutely no idea what was out there, but hey, it sounded like an adventure. I mean, I guess I could have always gone sideways across the sand, but 1, I don't know how well this thing would drive on sand, and 2, I don't think I'd last too long. So right it was. Benny and I strapped in, released the handbrake, and set off. The start of the road trip. Now for the first few miles, it was perfect plain sailing. We were covering great distance. Now I would be lying if I said I didn't run into slight inconveniences. Oh, this shit, piss off. But after that was out the way, it was exactly what I was looking for. Huge, sprawling desert plains, mountainous rocks in the sunset. It was all going according to plan. Okay, so I might not be the best driver, but in my defense, this rust bucket would throw out at any given opportunity. Thankfully this time I'd just lost a bit of oil and I'd managed to roll back onto my wheels. So I pulled up the handbrake, scraped Benny up off the dusty desert road, plonked him back in the passenger seat, and put the rifle back in its rightful place. So, with the last hour of daylight fading, a few miles down the road, I decided it'd be best to pull over and settle down for a well-needed rest. It'd been a rough start, but things would be better tomorrow. So, it was the start of a new day. The sun was blaring, and I was ready for this day of travel to be far better than the last. I had a quick piss break, opened up the trunk, filled up with a bread roll for breakfast, chugged some water to quench my thirst, and hopped back behind the wheel. Now today, I wanted to cover a good bit of distance, really make a dint. So off I went, sand for miles. I really did have the road trip bug. Boy was I flying. The only thing was, sure, it was great out here, very scenic and all, but I didn't really know where anything was. I had no GPS, and the radio was frankly useless.
This is the Angry Greg Rage Radio Show. Angry Greg, watch out or he breaks your neck.
I needed some sort of idea about my surroundings, where to go. Thankfully, a few miles down the road, I spotted a wooden watchtower, so I thought it best to investigate. I pulled over, took out my binoculars, told Benny to stay put. Benny, you stay right there, and climbed the wooden tower ladder. Now at the top, boy could I see for miles. I pulled the binoculars up to my eyes, and I'm not gonna lie, I saw nothing to fill me with hope. Sand, huge dusty rocks. It wasn't looking promising. But hey, I found a small light that I swiftly stole and loaded into the trunk. But with no time to dwell on things, I hopped back in the car and trundled on, hoping to find something of worth. I mean, my supplies and fuel weren't going to last forever. Well, after a while, I came across a small gas station featuring rusted pumps and a well. So, Benny and I stretched our legs, and I scavenged for supplies. Luckily, I found some extra ammo, a bottle of Lonyao that I chucked, yeeted into the sandy abyss, pissed up the well, and then ate a croissant that I found that was probably soaked in gasoline. I also found a 0.7 litre mix of gas and oil, which was great, but when I tried loading it in the trunk, I may have accidentally taken a swig of the stuff. So with my stomach probably eroding from the inside, I strapped Benny in, and with my limited supplies from the gas station, it was back on the road. But it seemed that the engine had other ideas. Oh shit. It did not sound healthy. I was frantically trying to get the ignition going again. Come on, but nothing. I could feel the car gradually grinding to a halt. I cruised it for as long as I could, come on, until finally, I lost the battle. Well, I hopped out the car and in the desert sunset got to maintenance. At first I thought maybe it was the engine, but upon further inspection, the coolant levels were fine and there was a good amount of oil. Well, believe it or not, my hours of confusion looking at the engine took me all the way into nightfall before I realised the fuel tank was empty. So I whacked open the trunk and refilled the tank with some of the spare gas that I'd brought along. Now with the gasoline oil mix that I'd accidentally drank earlier wiring my brain awake, I decided it was probably best to just soldier on through the night. So I flicked on the interior light, rolled down the window for some fresh air, I crossed my fingers and the ignition started. So off I went through nightfall. So, after driving through dusk, the day was bright, and I was wide awake. I was wired. I don't know if it was the desert air or the effects of the gasoline on my brain, but my energy level was through the roof. I was chewing up the tarmac. I was zooming. I made this mess of rust feel like a new Ferrari. 160. The speed needle was virtually falling off the speedometer. I was taking corners like a dream. I was about to break the sound barrier. Boy, this was great. I was on top of the world. So it seemed that during my speed fest, I had massively gotten ahead of myself and lost control of the car. I was lucky to be alive. Well, after finally coming round, I saw the true state of the vehicle. The speedometer that once read 160 was now splattered with blood. I clambered out of the driver's seat to see that 2 doors had been removed and the front wheel had completely detached itself. But I wasn't going to give up this easy. I limped over to the trunk that was luckily still intact, had a big swig of Lonyao and got to work repairing her. Firstly, I strapped the back door back onto its hinges and then moved on to trying to repair the front wheel. But it seemed that the rim was completely totaled, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't snap it back onto the axle. Get on there. I will admit, I was getting slightly worried. Without a front wheel, I wasn't going to get very far. But then, I remembered. I had the crappy old wheel that came with the car. Oh, Dave, I could kiss you. So I fastened the passenger side door on quickly and dug the dusty old wheel out of the trunk. And who would have thought? It worked first time. Now, it wasn't going to be great by any means. I'd need a replacement eventually, but it would do for now. Finally, I checked on Benny. He was alive and well. So I plonked him back in his rightful place and reattached the rear view mirror and air freshener. Now, there was also a pretty big blood stain on the windscreen, but with the lack of cleaning supplies, I had no real way to remove it. I tried everything. Now, I feared that the engine wouldn't even start, never mind run properly, but despite hitting a pole at 160, it ran perfectly. I mean, I wasn't going to complain. The car was somewhat back to normal. My efforts had worked. I was starting to think that this baby was invincible. I mean, you know what they say, what doesn't kill you removes 2 doors, 1 wheel, and covers your windscreen in blood. But regardless of my obscured vision, there was still plenty of daylight left, so it was back onto the tarmac. my recent high-speed accident, you'd think that I'd be driving more cautiously. But that wasn't the case, baby. With my foot slammed down on the pedal and the car hurtling through the desert, eventually I spotted a bus stop in the distance, very similar to the one outside the shack earlier. And as I got closer, to my surprise, a huge bus, very subtly and very smoothly, popped in right in front of the stop. I slammed my foot on the brake, grinding the car to a halt. Investigating the familiar bus stop, I found more Lonyal that I swiftly drank, before realising it was not Lonyal. Now I can only assume that this bus was the one that was supposed to be running the route that we saw earlier, but after inspection, this thing was going nowhere. The bodywork was rusted and the doors were jammed shut. So I did the next logical step and tried forcefully smashing the windscreen, a bottle, a wheel, the rim of the wheel, the katana, slashing all over the place, but nothing. I don't know what this glass was made out of, but it didn't budge. Evidently, this bus was useless, but I did have one plan. Now this is more like it. I found one thing I could take from that damn bus, or should I say 4 things. I mean, I needed to replace the crappy spare wheel anyway, and I couldn't have had just one huge wheel, so I went the full hog and worked through the night performing my master heist. Plus now, I had a trunk stacked full of spare wheels. Now I will admit, whilst my newfound upgrades did give me massive street cred, what they made up for in form, they definitely lacked in function. I mean, this thing was allergic to staying upright. Oh god, no, oh. The centre of gravity was completely thrown off. It was slipping and sliding all over the place. Not to mention, the tyres were clipping through the floor of the car. But don't you worry, I eventually got the hang of it and returned to driving far too fast until I very quickly neared a larger gas station this time that I narrowly missed within an inch of my life. Slow down, slow down, slow down. Ooh! Getting out to investigate, boy did I hit the jackpot. A pristine baby blue hatchback that, to be frank, was in far better condition than my current ride. Everything under the hood looked good too. The fuel tank was empty, but quite literally a metre away was a 1.3 litre gas can. But before that, I thought it was worth quickly having a look around. I discovered a fridge that I ransacked for sustenance, as well as an old rusted body of a motorcycle with no wheels and no fuel that wasn't going anywhere anytime soon, and an equally old, stale, jammy Dodger that I huffed down anyway. So with my new finds, as I walked out of the shack, I saw a gigantic feral rabbit hurtling towards the car. I knew what I needed to do. I swung the back door open, grabbed the rifle from the back seat and loaded in a bullet. Bam! Direct hit. Loaded another in. Bam! He took them both. He violently threw the car, sending it flipping through the air and onto the road ahead. My hands were shaking. Another bullet goes in. A hit. Reload after reload. But before I could load up my final shot, he KO'd himself by glitching into the underside of the car. Holy shit, it was terrifying. This desert was turning out to be somewhat of a death trap. So after I retrieved the old car from the tarmac, I got to work on the shiny new blue one. With the fuel tank newly filled, I moved over all my supplies, the katana, all the oil, the spare tyres, and finally, with the air freshener fastened in place, the night was upon us. Tomorrow we'd set off, but for now, we needed rest. Luckily, the shack had a Ben in it. Benny passed out after the long day that he'd endured, and I quickly followed. A big day ahead of me tomorrow. So waking up, I wasted no time at all and got right back to work on the new car. I found a couple of spare doors lent against the wall, but with neither fitting, I thought it'd be best to stick to the original. So I loaded Benny in and got behind the wheel. Finally, an upgrade. Boy, it felt nice. I twisted the key and nothing happened. The engine was busted, even with a fresh supply of gas. Now what I realised in hindsight is I should have used the 2-stroke gas and oil mix from earlier and it would have worked fine. But sadly, I was no car expert. But I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I was determined to make this thing work. I taxied the baby blue box of metal onto the road and went for a push start. Sprinting, the car picked up speed. I swung myself into the driver's seat, but no luck. Again, I got out, running, sprinting quickly. Then another rabid bunny appeared out of nowhere, pouncing at me. I used the car door for protection and put distance between us, frantically equipping my rifle and peppered him with bullets. Jesus, there was no hope. I was left with no other option but to do the walk of shame and move all my supplies back. Although it wasn't entirely bad, I did nick the snazzy new wheels off the blue car and swap the rusted door for one of the ones I found earlier, even if it didn't fit. So as I stayed up through the night, drearily reversing my work back onto the old rust bucket, I couldn't help but wonder to myself, where was everyone? Everywhere I'd been was abandoned. Where were all the people? There was no way that the only life in this desert was evil rabbits. I mean, sure, I was lucky there was no police officers, because with the speeds I'd been clocking in today, I'd probably be rotting behind bars. And as daylight reared its head, I found myself feeling deflated and angry. God, this holiday is awful. Nothing ever happens around here. Is anyone even out there? Give me a damn sign. something was going on around here, and I was going to get to the bottom of it. I stormed down the open desert roads. Now, the thing was, whilst my water supply was still intact, I had completely run out of food. I had to find something to eat. I was getting hungrier by the minute, and this was affecting my driving. But I soldiered on. I was determined. I was fighting a battle on two fronts. I needed to find somewhere. I was becoming desperate. I spotted a large rusted cargo ship in the distance. That was bound to be packed with food. I floored it across the dusty desert floor, nearing the large structure. But as I got closer, my heart sank. Hundreds of blue oil barrels, and not a crumb of food in sight, not to mention people. Things were getting dire. I was on my last legs. I was losing the will to continue. I crawled back behind the driver's seat and just drove. I could barely control the car. My vision was fading. I lost hope. But then, like magic, I saw something in the distance. It was a house with a garage. At first I thought maybe I was seeing things, a mirage, but boy, it was real. The first sign of civilization. This was my last chance. As I pulled up outside, the place was run down. I thought it best to equip my rifle just in case. The rabbits could be anywhere. I loaded a bullet into the chamber and wandered through the uncut grass. As I made it through the entrance, I saw something my eyes could hardly believe. A man. Finally, a person. After all this time, he could help me, but I couldn't have been more wrong. The man was decaying. He charged towards me. Thankfully, an upturned bed blocked his path, and I ended him with a bullet to the head. This place was a damn hellhole, but I had no time to dwell on things. If I wanted to survive, I needed food ASAP. Well, it seems that the strange man was protecting an Italian sausage on the floor. I had no idea how long it had been there, but it was my last resort. I devoured it. My hunger bar filled, and my health slowly climbed. I instantly felt better. While next to the sausage was a fridge. I ripped it open, and I was met with a heavenly delight. 2 full bars of chocolate. But with my hunger full and my energy levels somewhat back to normal, I thought it best to investigate the abandoned abode first. But sadly, all my search really resulted in was a few rusted car bodies with no usable parts. But as I turned into a new room, I saw another one. He was just stood there with his back to me. A rifle similar to my own lay next to his feet. He hadn't noticed me. I quietly pulled my rifle up and fired a shot clean into his head. But this one was much stronger. He chased me out of the house onto the sand. I laid 2 more shots into him until finally he dropped. So with the house finally cleared, I transported the confectionery goods into the trunk. What had happened to this place? Why was everything that moved here either rabid or undead? Well, having regained most of my strength, I was going to put an end to this once and for all. Something strange was going on in this desert, and I was going to unravel all of it. But first, I needed to restock. Well, on my drive across to the house, I vaguely remember spotting a second larger structure slightly further back. That was bound to have supplies. As I sped over to it, it appeared to be some sort of radio tower, and as I pulled up, the car died. The fuel tank had run completely dry. Sure, I had the 2-stroke fuel from earlier, but with only 0.7 litres of the stuff, I'd need to find extra, or I'd be stranded. Well, venturing into the stone radio tower, the ground floor was sparse and yet again abandoned. I started climbing the ladder, passing each floor until I eventually made it onto the roof, until all I had left to climb was the radio mast itself. So with the sun almost blinding me, I finally made it to the top. I soaked in the view, how far I'd come, the beached ship, and like a gift from above, there sat a can of 1.3 litres of fuel. I couldn't grab it fast enough, so I cheerfully climbed down the radio mast, down the ladder, and poured the fuel into the almost empty tank. I also refilled the 2 empty gas cans from earlier with a clean supply of drinking water using taps I'd found inside, and then loaded them into the trunk. That was it. I was fully restocked. Now, with my booking actually ending today, I had a flight home tomorrow afternoon. It had been the vacation from hell, but I needed to uncover the mystery that was cursing this place. The wildlife, the inhabitants, something was up. I had made my decision. So for one last time, I hopped back behind the wheel, pressed the gas, and me and Benny drove off into the sunset.